Welcome to the Wellness Law Podcast, where wellness and the law meet for contemplation and collaboration. This podcast is brought to you by the Center for Health and Wellness Law. I am your host, Barbara Zabawa. Welcome, Cynthia Stammer, to the Wellness Law Podcast. I am so grateful for you taking time to talk with my audience today about your legal practice and your very impressive legal career. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Cynthia Marcotte Stamer. She is an American College of Employee Benefits Counsel and a Martindale-Hubbell AV preeminent, that is the top 1% attorney, an advisor, board certified in labor and employment law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. She is a top-rated lawyer and legal leader and best lawyer for her work in ERISA and employee benefits law, healthcare law, labor and employment law, and business and commercial law. All of those areas of these legal practice areas that I just listed cross over and intersect with what I consider to be wellness law, which is the title of this podcast. And that's why I wanted Cynthia on the podcast, because she has been in legal practice for many years and has led these different areas of law practice and has special insight into why wellness law is an important separate practice area. And she has a very unique approach to looking at how law can be changed for the better. So with that introduction, welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Barbara. And I'm very excited to find a soulmate on the law in this area of passion, because when you read that description and versus what you and I talk about, what I really do, it's funny how people find expertise in other areas around what we do.
It was very organic on how we stumbled upon each other, and you are very much involved with the American Bar Association, which is for the legal community, the top governing association that lawyers belong to and that guide lawyers with standards and ethics and advocate for lawyers nationally. So I guess my first question to you is, from that perspective of a leadership role and someone who has seen the evolution of these practice areas over time that intersect with wellness, how do you think approaching law as an infrastructure lawyer, that's a term that you used before we hit record, is essential to helping make change and improvements in people's well-being?
I grew up, as I mentioned to you, as the daughter of a public health nurse and in a family of healthcare people that were very involved in the community. And I started working on projects from a policy standpoint, as well as making house calls and doing things like that with them at a very young age. And what I learned from that was watching my mother save people one person at a time, is that she kept having to go back to the well over and over again for the same problems, because there were legal or social or cultural or financial or community objects of poverty, of how the rules work for reimbursement. You had to, in order to get somebody that you knew had diabetes that was a child in for treatment, you had to get them 2 hours away to be diagnosed, and then you could get them SRS benefits and those kinds of things. And I also came up as a college policy debater. And so I worked on policy. So I've been working on policy and regulatory affairs and community affairs my entire life. And when I went to law school, it was really with the focus of wanting to make change in that area, not really to practice law. I enjoyed it, but that's not what was my plan. But I was persuaded to believe that I could help effectuate that. And so I was not interested in a career in estate planning or elder law, helping one person at a time. So I started as an employee benefits and labor and employment lawyer. Primarily at that time, it was pension law, but I wanted to do health plan and health and wellness, workplace safety, these other
Mhm.
aspects of things. So I got to be on the front end of what's now a very booming practice of health plans and health insurance that's far superseded what is today's pension and employee benefit law. That was the traditional practice. And I,
Yeah. Just well,
yeah, and I found the ABA instrumental for that for a whole bunch of reasons. In part, it helped me connect very cost effectively and very meaningfully very early with people that were experts in the related areas of law that didn't necessarily see it together and who were open to mentoring me when I saw things. The Welfare Plan Committee in Real Property, Probate, and Trust was created because I kept showing up at the meetings, and every time they talk about pension laws, I'd say, "What does this mean for health plans?" And they finally made a committee for it. So there's that. There's the opportunity to collaborate and learn and connect with people like you and others that have different perspectives and things come together. And there's also both through the practice areas and through ABA's policy involvement, the opportunity to actually provide input either directly to learn how to be an advocate, but also if you want to promote proposals and legislation or modern laws or other activities that the ABA and its sections get behind that actually lead to tremendous policy changes. And it's
mhm.
amazing. And I'm not the biggest deal or even the closest to the biggest deal of the people that do that in the ABA, but it is so accessible and so available that I very early on decided I had to be part of the ABA and I drink the ABA Kool-Aid all the time.
Does the ABA get involved with just topics when it's promoting, advocating, I'm sorry, for change at maybe at the legislative level, at only if it impacts the legal community, or is it also trying to advocate for change that might be adjacent to the legal community?
The ABA not only advocates for things that are good for lawyers and the profession, but the ABA believes and most lawyers believe that we have a community responsibility. So the ABA's advocacy works on community and client interests across the board. And so there's very active committees that talk about diversity that might be sensitive right now because the ABA was very involved in the advocacy promoted many of the DEI activities that may perhaps now are out of favor, but they have tremendous activities in terms of I've worked on projects helping the people down in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes, and there were some unique legal barriers to getting them assistance, but there was also helping them just having assistance. I've worked on poverty law projects. We've gone into inner city schools. So sometimes it's just actually organizing pro bono or fundraising or other services, but a lot of it is working on trying to make the world a better place. And there's such a number of generous people and everybody's passion and where they might choose to connect, whether it's healthcare law, animal law, poverty law, human rights, immigration law. In every section of the ABA, you'll find that there are very thriving groups of people working very diligently to improve the law and the community. You just have to
Well,
find your brand.
yeah. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with wellness law. Now, for the audience, wellness law is something that I've been championing for over a decade now, but it's still not technically recognized as a legal practice area that, like employment law, for example, or healthcare law, or elder law, trusts and estates, or business law. And I'd like for it to be recognized in that same way as other practice areas are, because that means that other lawyers are trained in it and help advance the cause of getting, well, the wellness industry under control. Because right now, as I've written about, it's very much the Wild West. And so people who work in wellness feel a lot of times like they don't know what they can and can't do, and because there's no real structure to it. So getting wellness law recognized as a practice area that other lawyers can engage in and lead the discussion would be really useful, I think, to the wellness industry as well as the legal industry. And so you've seen you talked about how you started out in wanting to work with health plans, but that wasn't really a thing when you started out, which you said it was like in the 80s, early 90s.
late
That's
80s, late 80s, early 90s when I came
yeah.
out to practice. And they had a law called Section 89, which was an effort to use the tax code to try to incentivize employers to offer across the board benefits. It was ultimately repealed, but came up with some of the concepts that are now part of the Affordable Care Act
Mhm.
tax rules. But there were a whole bunch of other things. I'm always telling people that the tax code is not a very good motivator for change, meaningful change in health benefits or health coverage. There are other things that we work on to get that now. But
How
to your
did you
point,
oh,
that's
yeah.
good. Go ahead.
No,
It's
how did you get from having a practice area that really was not defined, was not something that recognized formally, to where it is now, which is health insurance law? Yeah, that there's practice areas, there's law firms devote departments to it. How did that happen?
not just like cyber or animal health or something else. The need, I think it's always existed in various forms. I think health plan and health insurance problems have always existed. And I think from the work I've done on social projects, trying to get people care and things like that, wellness law has always happened too, and public health has always existed. But
Mhm.
the way that it tends to work is the people that were needing the services probably are the least effective. It's not like you're a corporation and you go and you know you want to raise funds or whatever. So you have to get started with somebody who looks at the opportunity or the need. When I started health plans, I came out of a family that one of the lines that we owned, we worked on hospitals. We had health insurance people in our families, and I had a public health and many other practitioners in health. And so I saw many different places where things were relevant and tried to figure out ways to do that. And there's some of the first meaningful wellness and communities and HMOs came out of Kaiser and some of the employment based
Mm.
things. Wellness and safety have always been a need or an interest or a requirement in the employment place. And unhealthy workers have always been a problem there. So I found a community that saw a need. And at the time, the health insurance costs, because of some of the regulatory reforms, had gone through the roof. So suddenly there was also an opportunity for the practice areas. Now, in some of the other traditional areas of wellness, like occupational health and safety or things like that, that really is more historically accomplished because of the costs and the liabilities that come out of workplace injury or workplace illness. And
Mhm.
I think both of those today, as I worked on the HIPAA reform and the ACA reform rules and regulations, and then the implementation for the Affordable Care Act on wellness. And yet those things don't really do most of what we need to do for some of the broader wellness and well-being things. Mental health and MAPIA again, is a big part of things, but it only does so much. I'm working on some of those things as well. So when we go through and we look at that, I think the time is right because there is a convergence of another need structure with mental health, with post COVID situations, with the pandemic, with a whole host of these kinds of things. People are recognizing that there are needs to address the areas that you now encompass in wellness law,
Yeah.
which is, it spans many of these different issues. But if you're going to focus on really trying to make wellness work, it's different than healthcare. It's a part of healthcare. My mother
Yeah.
was in the wellness business, public health, and wellness tends to have to do with the intrinsic ability of an individual to maintain their own well-being and health, and a communities of those, and the communities tend to do it where healthcare is about disease, really.
Yes.
They get disease and care for disease. It's what happens when you don't get there. And the cost of that is now creating a desire for wellness to work, but all the requisites and how it's currently set up really don't have the pieces connected. So I think the time is very ripe and powerful for wellness law, because I think if we can bring the holistic points of view of healthcare, of community, of poverty, of human rights, of mental health, about all these other parts that really must be in place to make wellness work, we can leverage the interest of government and employers and communities that are paying the costs of when it doesn't work to
Yeah.
help fund that. But you're not going to get there by having non-discrimination rules under HIPAA. It's just not going to happen. It's not
The
like,
Talking about very discrete bodies of law like OSHA or HIPAA or the Affordable Care Act, which are great and lawyers need to be aware of them. But I think what I hear you saying, what really resonates with me is wellness law is not just knowing these discrete bodies of law that overlap various existing practice areas. It's really about the end game, which is improving the well-being of the people being served, whether they are employees, whether they are people in the community. What are the barriers and hurdles that these individuals face in the workplace, face in their communities that a wellness lawyer can help address? And I'm writing a top piece right now on biohacking and med spas and this whole longevity kind of movement where people are wanting to live longer, live healthier. They're not suffering from a disease or illness. They're not needing necessarily treatment in a hospital or anything like that, but they feel empowered to take their initiative and engage in different treatments for beautifying themselves, for helping themselves optimize their well-being. Peptides, as an example. I read about there's peptide parties where people are obtaining these peptide concoctions and injecting them at home parties. And
wow,
and they're doing it from a place of empowerment. They're doing it because they see influencers on the internet and social media saying, "Yeah, you should try this. You'll feel strong. You'll feel invigorated." And so the medical spa and longevity movement is really an interesting space that bridges or straddles public health, wellness, and healthcare or medical care, because you still traditionally need a physician to make the order somewhere down the line legally of the peptide, but they're not really present. But it's people are using it for a wellness kind of purpose, and public health isn't really involved, but I feel like they should be because they're the ones who have the infrastructure for educating people about
yeah.
the risks of
What I want to point out
doing.
about this spa situation, I don't want to be offensive because I do represent and advise people that found medical spas. But if you want to think about healthcare in a public health context, the way my mother lived it, where she made health calls to places that most of us would be afraid to go. See, med spas are wellness for people that can afford to be well. And I celebrate that. I think you should have the power to do that. But when we're talking about wellness law in a community and systemic thing, we're actually talking about there is a gap there. That's item one. In that, so wellness for many people that present at Parkland Hospital is they don't have a home and they share dirty streets with dirty people, and they don't have the ability to get their medications filled. So they're not even to the point of looking at wellness because they don't have a reliable food source.
Yes.
And wellness law is special education kids or people with diminished capacity or cultural differences that they don't know that eating enchiladas is bad for their heart every day. And we could go on and on about those things, but there is an income gap. And I don't think we should diminish people's ability, if they can afford it, to be as well as possible. We have to recognize that there's a whole bunch of people that the system of money that funds care doesn't provide that. And then the second thing that I think is ironic about the med spa and the various wellness unregulation that I know you are very aware of and that I get the opportunity to work on is the fact that there's a lot of the cures that operate in an environment where they're on myth rather than odd things, and things I've had to defend are active promoters of very expensive treatments that are not probably supported by science, but people can afford them. And you, in the poverty community, you have the same thing. And then perhaps the hope now, whether you agree with all of his perspectives or not. But for example, a prime example of that would be bioidentical hormones. And as we know, Secretary Kennedy has taken the lid off of that, and a certain number of other things that are now more accepted. I'm always wondering, are they going to pay for bioidentical hormones or GLP-1s? GLP-1s today is a problem for people that can afford to pay for care. But
Right.
we have a huge community of diabetes and whatever that's going to bankrupt our system if we don't figure out. And most cardiologists, nephrologists, and other industry experts would tell you that is a wellness opportunity that our communities need to get behind. The questions that's being fought over primarily is who owns the patent and who's going to pay for it. Those are
Yeah.
all wellness questions, and they're embedded in the work that I and many other people do. And then the last part of that I think comes out from listening to you and others is you look at these things and you say they're disparate. But whether you're talking about healthcare or wellness or special education or homelessness or animal health or whatever it is, you can be involved in that area of law, but represent primarily different people and different perspectives. And the politics and the needs of the different client bases look differently. So if I'm representing somebody who's promoting those spa opportunities, they want me to help them maintain telemedicine and get it paid for and have the freedom to prescribe and direct primary care and all that other stuff. But they don't want somebody interfering in their ability to do that. And there's opportunities there for the right thing or the wrong thing, whether you're talking about the wealthy or the poor, the highly educated or the less sophisticated. And
Yeah.
we need that in all of those areas. And no matter which area you work in, coming back to our discussion of the ABA and other things that I found beneficial, is it brings me in contact with people that work in all these different places. Because no matter where you are, there's a point at which your vertical of expertise needs to connect with another vertical of expertise to really solve the problem.
Yes.
My immersion in the ABA and other activities has given me a wealth of understanding, opportunities to know different ways to solve a problem, and relationships that we can collaborate on. And then I learn more and I become better at it. And then I can come up with better solutions that fit the problem more deeply and holistically, which is where wellness has to come from.
Yes. It is very multidisciplinary. And I love how you've articulated the need to be collaborating with different experts to solve the problem. And the problem, I think, from the wellness law perspective that's trying to be solved is how do we allow an equitable way for people to optimize their well-being and however they've defined it. What kind of legal structures need to be in place to allow for that to happen for all people, again, equitably, as opposed to just being solely luxury and only for people who can afford it. But how do we bring that ability for all people, regardless of income or background, to have that opportunity to optimize their well-being? And that's what I'd like to see more lawyers trying to
I think the
help.
ABA and other activities can do that. And I also believe that I think the COVID outbreak highlights the need for us to have discussions and pursue solutions to expand wellness and well-being and prevention and healthcare and intervention and those things. There, you're never going to get, I'm not sure that we have full equity. There's always somebody that has more to spend or whatever, more access. Sometimes more access is just access to the advocate. But, you get lucky enough that you bump into somebody who says, well, let me help you. But, and not everybody has the same capacity to use things. And that's a big problem in several of our communities. They don't have the education or the a home, or whatever it is that needs to make them able to take advantage of the resources they give. But what COVID and other public health crises today we're talking about Ebola, what they show us is that we have a shared community. We need to at least acknowledge the basics and work together for some basic aspects of that. And we also need to look at the ways we've looked at it that have been designed to provide equity, but really have just reduced access overall in the system, because that's not the option. That goal is not that. So we're working on those things. But what's important to that is you don't get there at all until you start.
Yeah.
And whatever point of the system you start at, these are systems. People's wellness is a system. Their ability to meet wellness is a system. And they live in a community, and a community that is a system, whether you're a veteran, which program you're covered by, where you're educated, whatever those criteria are. And not everybody understands veterans health, and nobody understands this. And when you move between systems, they break too. And sometimes what you need is not insurance or access to care, but you need access to a place where you can take advantage of the care and benefit from it. Those are all continuums. So you get into housing, a lot of other things. But that's why these things have to be multidisciplinary. They need to come from multiple perspectives. They need to include a cohesive and inclusive community of the rich, the poor, the organizations, the others. They need to be all over the place. And sadly, what they oftentimes don't include is an effective advocacy of the voice that says, I don't need somebody calling me on the phone to remind me to take my medicines because I can't afford to it, or I can't get to Walgreens to buy it. And so that is also where we as lawyers, I think, have the blessing of the opportunity to participate and make a meaningful difference, is that
Yeah.
we not only can change the infrastructure, but our knowledge of what needs to be done to really make those changes in the infrastructure work has to be informed by patient-centric, people-centric realities of the people we're trying to help, because that's where we go wrong too often. And again, these are opportunities for us, both through civic service, public service, pro bono service, as well as informed by our profession and how we choose to work, to constantly have an opportunity to become better at what we do and make the world a better place. And that's why I'm so active in things like the ABA and other places, because it enhances my ability to do that and enriches my ability to understand and to have new perspectives that open up new ideas and opportunities to put the pieces together so the world shifts a little bit.
On that note, I just again want to thank you for your service, Cynthia. You truly are an inspiration, someone to look up to and emulate. I hope more lawyers do that. And if people want to learn more about your work and your career, how can they do that?
I'm active on LinkedIn. My cynthiastamer.com website is not focused on looking beautiful, but it's very content rich. And if you're a young lawyer or a young law student, join the American Bar Association while you're in law school. It's free. It's a great time to get involved. Volunteer for medicine law or one of these other committees. The Financial Literacy Project in the tort trial and insurance practice section is a great opportunity. But just get involved and come and talk to us. We're very accessible, and I'm not unique in the ABA. That's why it's been such a great place. And let's figure it out. I'm very excited about this idea of an actual formalized wellness law, because it spans so many of these areas. And we're excited to have you come and share more about it. And I'd be thrilled to say I know a wellness lawyer, and that we see more of that, because I think that branding helps people understand that it's not, I think sometimes working on these issues is looked at either esoteric or maybe unfocused, until you bring it into focus.
Yeah.
And people see how it connects. And when people see how it connects, it's easier for other people to do it, and empowers them to be brave enough to try it too. So please keep up the good work. And thank you for letting me be a part of your vision and sharing me, because I'm so excited to hear and watch what you're doing. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Take care. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Law Podcast. You can find more wellness law resources by visiting the Center for Health and Wellness Law website at www.wellnesslaw.com, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media. Until the next episode, stay well, stay hopeful, and stay legal.